Hello, and welcome to the next session in the series of sessions, where we're talking about muscle identification. We are going to focus on the arm today, and we're going to start off with this first muscle, the biceps brachii. Let's first go ahead and put our information in there as terms of the origin, the insertion, and action, and then we'll take a look at some images and we'll identify the origin insertion on bones and mark it out on our worksheet here. So the origin, we're going to have two origins. We're going to have a long head and a short head. So long head is the supraglenoid tubercle. The supraglenoid tubercle. That would be the long head. The short head is the coracoid process of the scapula. The insertion, one insertion, radial tuberosity. Okay. And the action is flexes the forearm. Flexes the forearm. Notice it doesn't say arm, it flexes the forearm. Let's go ahead and take a couple of pictures and look at that. So here we can see this muscle. It's the most superficial muscle and the anterior part of the upper arm. There's one on that side, obviously on the other side as well. So that's my biceps brachii. We also can get a close-up view. So here is a close-up. This is muscle right here. And we have our two heads. So we have one connected to the coronoid process and one that goes up, and the tendon is sitting in that groove between the greater and lesser tubercle. That's the intertubercular groove, and is connected to the supraglenoid tubercle, which is right here. So what we're looking at here is we're connecting to this point right here. That's this right here, which is the this is the short head. Okay, and that's connected here, and the long head is connected to that point right there, which is what you've seen right here. And then it inserts on the radial tuberosity, which is that point right there, radial tuberosity. Another way to see the same thing, using Netter, we have the biceps brachii long head, that's the supraglenoid tubercle. Biceps brachii short head, that is the coracoid process. And then we're going to insert down here on the radial tuberosity. Okay, so let's go ahead and mark those on our pictures, and on the next page we'll see that. So red is going to be for origin. Okay. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to do here. I'm going to do there. Okay. And then I'm going to do for blue, which is the insertion, right here. And then in yellow is the actual muscle. Okay. All right, we can label these. Let's call this is the short head. And this is my long head. And this is the short head. Okay. So that's my biceps brachii. All right. The next muscle that we're going to take a look at, and that's going to be the brachialis. So let's go ahead and do the brachialis. And we'll put the information in first, and then we'll identify that on our bones. The origin of the brachialis is the distal anterior surface of humerus. The insertion is the ulnar tuberosity. And the action is flexes the forearm. So let's go ahead and take a picture or look at some pictures to see that. So I'm going to come back to this image. And do I see it? Well, I can see it if I look carefully. So you can see it's identified here, brachialis, but it's a little bit confusing because the truth is it sits directly underneath the biceps brachii. So it's kind of hidden, especially in this view, by the biceps brachii. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to show you a different image, and that would be this image. So what we've done here is we've cut away a section of the biceps brachii. So normally that would be stretched between this point. So we've cut here, we remove that, and underneath is our brachialis. So you can see it's directly underneath that muscle. Okay, that's the brachialis. Let me go ahead and show you that same thing using a model now. And here I'm going to really flip out. So this is the arm. This is my deltoid muscle. Scapula is over here. And this is my upper arm, and down here is my lower arm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the deltoid muscle. And what I see on top is the biceps brachii. And if I remove that muscle, I see underneath it the brachialis. However, if I look carefully with the biceps brachii in place, I can see the brachialis sticking out a little bit at the edges. Okay? So that takes care of that muscle. Let's take a look at where it's connected here. So here, this is my anterior view. And as you can see, there's this big swath of red right here. And that's my brachialis muscle. Anterior view. And then if I move down here, there is where it inserts This is the radius on this side. This is the ulna, and that's the ulnar tuberosity right underneath that lip. And that would be that right there. So that corresponds to this. Okay. This surface is all of this. Okay. So let's go ahead and put that into our drawing. We're going to start off with red. And it's very easy. Just going to, nice big patch like this. There. Okay. And then I can do this with blue. And here with blue. Brachialis muscle. All right, let's move on and do the next muscle, which is the brachioradialis. The brachioradialis. Let's go ahead and get our information in, and then we'll come back and look at some pictures. So the brachioradialis. Origin. It's going to be the lateral border of the distal end of the humerus. Lateral border of distal end of humerus. The insertion is going to be superior. Whoops, spell that right. Superior to styloid process of radius. And the action is, believe it or not, flexes the forearm. Let's take a picture, and I'm going to turn here to my favorite, and that would be netter. And this is a real nice image of that muscle. Here's my brachioradialis right here. Okay. Nice, nice, very nice. I think better than what your textbook produces. Your textbook, the best we're going to do here is this image right here. Not an extremely clear. Here it is on this side, brachioradialis. Not particularly clear in that picture, but very strong in this picture right here. Brachioradialis. Okay. All right, well, let's go ahead and identify the location of the origin. Remember, the origin is the lateral border of the distal end of the humerus. So here, if we look closely, brachioradialis muscle, and there it is, right there, okay? Yeah. Let me just do this. We're actually going to be looking at this muscle as well. I want to highlight that. Okay. All right. So that's my brachioradialis. Now, where is it going? To see that, we're going to look at this image right here. So this is the distal end of the radius. This is my radius. There's the round part of the radius. We go all the way down to the end. We have this little pointed part. That's the styloid process. And right there at that point is the brachioradialis insertion. Right there. Okay. So it goes from here down to here. Take a look at this. Okay. So, let me get this right. Yeah. So this is actually on the other. This is my. This is the medial side, and this is the lateral side. So we're talking about right here. And then the insertion is, that's that styloid process, and the insertion be right there on that bone. Okay. So let's take our red, and we're going to do a little line right here, lateral side here. Okay. And if we're looking at this, it's going to be up here. Okay. And then we're going to insert, using blue, right down here. On this image, this is the muscle, brachioradialis. Okay. Oakley dokleys. Let's move on. Now we're going to do, oh, I'm sorry. We can, one more way to look at that muscle. So this is the muscle that we just highlighted in our picture, brachioradialis. So this is the lateral side. This is the medial side. It's coming there and going down here. Okay. And here's my thumb. Let's see if I can push this out. There you go. There's my thumb. Okay. Which is, as you know, is medial. Okay. All right. The next muscle is the extensor carpi radialis. And then we're going to look at two of those. Extensor carpi radialis longus and extensor carpi radialis brevis. They sit right next to each other, and we now know that this is going to be the smaller of the two. Okay. This is the shorter one, and this is the longest one of the two. Extensor of the wrist, extensor of the wrist, extensor carpi, extending the wrist, the long muscle extending the wrist, extending the wrist, extensor carpi, it's the short muscle extending the wrist. Okay. We're going to do these two together because they are found as a pair. Before we do that, though, I want you to do a little experiment on your body. And I want you to extend your arm out in front of you. And I want you to make a fist with your hand. And now we're going to do two movements. We're going to extend and flex the wrist. We're going to extend the wrist, which is bending it back like this. Okay. And we're going to flex the wrist, which is bringing it towards your body. Okay. Now, I want you to place your hand at the elbow, on the lower arm, just below the elbow. And when you extend your arm, what you should feel is tension on the lateral side just below the elbow. You should feel the muscles on the lateral side of the arm tensing up because they are shortening. Okay? That's when you extend the wrist. When you flex the wrist, you will feel tension on the opposite side, on the medial side of the elbow. You'll feel muscles tightening there when you flex the wrist. So extenders of the wrist are coming off the lateral side of the arm, and flexors of the wrist are coming off the medial side of the arm. Okay, just so that you know, it makes it a little bit easier to keep these two straight, because we're going to look at we're looking at extensors here, but we'll also look at a flexor of the wrist. And if you know or keep in mind that information, it's easier for you to separate those muscles. But as I said, we're going to do extensor carpi radius longus and brevis together. So let's first write down the information for both, and then we'll take a look at where they are and talk about some clues or some landmarks that you can use to help identify these muscles. So first, the information. Extensor carpi radialis longus. Origin. The lateral, that's not a surprise, we just talked about that. Lateral supracondylar ridge of humerus. The insertion is metacarpal two. And remember, we're using Roman numerals. And the action is extends and abducts, moves the wrist away from center line. That's your extensor carpi radialis longus. Now, extensor carpi radialis brevis, which is at the bottom of the page. Let's go ahead. Origin, medial epicondyle of humerus. So before we go any further, let's compare this to the one we just did. Medial epicondyle. We know what an epicondyle is. And look at the terminology. Supra. So it's even higher. This muscle, the origin of this muscle is sitting above the origin of this muscle, because this is just epicondyle. This is like a duke or a lord. And here's our king. Okay. I know, that was lame, but what can you do? All right. Insertion. Metacarpal 3. Oh, gosh and golly. Metacarpal 3. And again, the action is going to be exactly the same. Extends and abducts hand. Oakley dokleys. Let's talk origin. So origin for this one is the lateral supracondylar ridge. If we look at this, extensor carpi radius longus, so it's right up there. Okay. And then just below it is the epicondyle, and that's for brevis, extensor carpi radialis brevis. So right there, two of them. Okay. On the actual bone itself. So this is a bone from the opposite side of the body. So here, the way we can tell that, so this big extension here is right there. So you just have to kind of use your mind and see that, and the domy part here, okay, is there, and the spindle part there is that right there, okay. But so we're actually, this is compared. So that is the same as this. That is this, and that is right here. Okay. Then we go to the insertions. And here we're going to have to we're going to have to go to the posterior view of the hand. So, posterior view, extensor carpi radialis longus, right there. So that's metacarpal 2. Okay. And extensor carpi radialis brevis, it's going to be 2 and 3. So this is the posterior aspect of the hand. So here's this. And this is my carpal bones. That's these right here. This is my thumb. So that's metacarpal 1. Here's metacarpal 2. It's going to be there. And metacarpal 3 right there. So those 2 points right there. Makes sense in the back of the hand, doesn't it? Because you're extending the wrist back this way. So it has to come off. It has to be inserted on the back of the hand, posterior aspect of the hand. Oakley dokley's. So let's go ahead and put in our here. So red here and red up there. Okay. And then we're going to have blue right here and right there. Now, I'm going to use the arm model to show you this because the textbook pictures of the forearm can be very, very confusing for students. So I prefer to use the models, which tells you something about what you might see on the exam. So remember the brachioradialis? Okay. Remember that's the lateral side of the arm. And now I have a muscle right underneath it here, and then right next to it another muscle. So this is extensor carpi radialis longus, and this is extensor carpi radialis brevis. Okay. And one landmark that will be very helpful for you when you're looking at an image, trying to figure out what exactly you're looking at, is if you look closely. Here's my thumb. If you look closely, there are some muscles here that are inserting on the thumb, and we're not learning the names of those muscles, so we don't need to bother with that. But these muscles, if you notice that, they're crossing over the distal end of all three of these muscles, radialis, longus, and brevis. So they create this pattern where the tendons insert underneath these muscles just as they approach the thumb. So these two muscles are going to be over here, right? They're inserting right here. And then they have to go under these muscles to get to that point right there. And if you look and find this pattern, and then 1, 2, 3 muscles, the first one is brachioradialis, second is extensor carpi radialis longus, and the smallest one, that one right there, is extensor carpi radialis brevis. All coming off of the lateral side of the arm. Okay. So, the last muscle that we want to talk about is, in fact, oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Let's do this. We haven't done this. Apologize. Let's do this. Well, actually, we have two more muscles that we need to talk about. So, here and here. Okay. This is the picture from the textbook. As you can see, it's quite confusing. This is the brachioradialis, actually, and I don't see the other two muscles in that image. So the next is the flexor carpi radialis, the flexor. So the first thing we know that this is going to come off the medial side, right? It has to come off the medial side of the arm because we just did that experiment on ourselves and we found out that when you flex your wrist, the muscles on the medial side of your arm are going under tension, which means that they're contracting. So flexor carpi radialis, let's start with origin. Medial, of course, medial. Epicondyle. Of humerus. Insertion, metacarpals. 2 and 3. Notice they are same metacarpals as the extensors, but we're going to see them now. They're going to be on the posterior, anterior part of the hand. Okay. And the action is extends, no, I'm sorry, flexes. I knew that was wrong as soon as I said it. And abducts the hand. So both of these can, both sets of these muscles we've just talked about can adduct. Okay? Because they're on this side of the hand. So they can move the hand in that direction. All right. So let's go ahead and find the images that we want. Here we go. So now we're over here. This is the flexor carpi radialis. There it is, right there. And that would be right there, this side of the bone, right there. Remember, the other ones were on this side here. That's lateral, and this is medial. Lateral, medial. Oh, come back here. Okay, so there they are right there. And then insertion is, so we need the anterior. Yeah, we need the anterior. This is anterior. Yeah. Okay, so here we are, right there. Flexor carpi radialis. Okay, so that's our anterior. And that's metacarpal 2 and 3. Okay. So on the hand, now notice that the thumb is on, whoops, here we go. Sorry, there we go. Thumb is on the same side, and here we are here. Apologize. It's going to be right there and right there. So these are my carpal bones, and right there. So here and here, those two locations right there. Okay. Now, how do you find this muscle? And I've got a nice image from the text book. That is Netter, I should say, not so much the textbook. Netter does this better. So, lateral and medial side. All right, so listen to the name now. Flexor carpi radialis. Flexor carpi radialis. So it's flexing the hand, has to come off the medial side. And flexor carpi radialis, what does that radialis have to do with anything? Well, that's referring to the radial bone, which, as you remember, Teddy Roosevelt, that's on the medial side of the arm. So you're going to have to aim for the thumb. So this muscle starts here and aims for the thumb. So there's a lot of muscles that are doing the same kind of thing. This one is too short. It's not going to the thumb at all. These are not going to the thumb. They're going to the middle of the wrist or to the lateral part of the wrist. There's only one muscle that starts here and goes directly towards the thumb, and that's this muscle right here. Okay. So if we look at the model, we're going to look for the same pattern. See if I can do this. Might be better this way. Okay. So I'm looking, this is the medial side of the elbow. This is the lateral side. And I'm looking for a muscle that starts here and goes to the thumb. So I can say, oh, look at this one. Nope, doesn't go to the thumb. I can say, well, maybe. No, doesn't go to the thumb. Goes to the center of the wrist. But this one starts here and goes to the thumb. That's the muscle we're interested in. That one right there. That's brachioradialis, if you recall. So they end up being quite close to each other here. Okay. So red for medial, red for the origin. And that's going to be right here. And then the insertion is going to be right here. Last muscle, the triceps brachii. The triceps brachii. So let's go ahead and fill in the information. Triceps brachii, this is the posterior part of your body. So let's start with origin, insertion, and action. And for origin, we want to give ourselves a lot of room because we have three in this case, because we have three triceps, three heads. Okay, so we want to do long head. And long head is the infra glenoid tubercle. We want to do lateral head. Which is the lateral, post and posterior. Surface of the humerus. And then the medial head is the entire posterior surface humerus. And then the insertion is going to be the olecranon. And the action is going to extend forearm. All right, let's do this. So, scapula, spine of the scapula, and we're going to have the long head, infraglenoid tubercle right there. We're going to have the lateral head right there, and we're going to have the medial head right here, and the insertion is the olecranon. Okay, so here, here, and here. Okay. So if we're looking at this, here's the posterior surface. Okay, well, let's do the scapula first. Okay. So this right here, there's my scapula. Here's my spine. Here's my spine. Here's the glenoid cavity or fossa, and right underneath it, my long head is attached right here. The rest of it will be on the posterior surface of the bone. So basically somewhere along here, okay, and then all of this surface here, and then the olecranon right there. We do have some decent pictures. As soon as I quickly go through and find them, there we go. So there's the infraglenoid tubercle, that head, and the last head is buried underneath this, so it's a little bit hard to see here, but they're all inserting right here on the olecranon. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll start off with red. I'm sorry. Well, one more time. So, one, two, three. There's three heads right there. Okay. There's the long head. There's the medial head and the lateral head. One, two, three. That's the muscle. And it's all inserting right here. This is tendon. So tendon is rather long, and the muscle fibers make a U shape around that tendon. And if you've ever noticed when somebody flexes that muscle, you might notice that sometimes there's a little indentation in the back of their arm, and that's the location of the tendon. And the muscle fibers are bulging around that, so it creates that little indentation. So let's go ahead and red here. Okay. Red here. And red here. Okay. And red here. Okay. And red here. Whoa, yay. All right, we can name those as soon as I find my pen. Okay. So this is going to be long head. And this one is going to be lateral head. And this is my medial head. And the insertion right there. And our muscle. So this is long head. This is going to be our lateral head. And that is our medial head. Ladies and gentlemen, that does the arm. So the next section we're going to turn to the leg, and then we will be done with the identification of muscle tissue. So thank you very much.